Today is Wednesday, June the 17th, and what we're seeing is just choppiness in the market, but we're seeing low volume. So we're going to do something a little different today. We're going to look at trends and see if there's any indication that things have topped out. A lot of the comments that you're reading online on CNBC, Market Watch, The Street, in fact, there was a really good article today on The Street that I tweeted out that really gives a good argument for why the market is overbought. And you've also seen articles, I'm sure, about how the US dollar is in for a big crash as the world economy starts to reorient after COVID. And, the trade practices put in place by the current administration. So advancers to decliners, you can see right here, 2-to-1, decliners to advancers. Let's look at the big charts. Here is the oscillator. You can't see it very much here, but this was yesterday, this was today, and right next to it is the day before. So we basically just wiped out yesterday in terms of the oscillator. Good chance that we're heading back down. The stacked volume shows the weakest volume now of the last 2 weeks. And selling and buying were distributed like this. So it was just the opposite of what we've seen the last 2 days, but on lower volume. And the summation index continued to tick up just a little bit higher because the oscillator was 20 on Monday and it was 19 today. So those were small incremental changes. Let's look at the charts. Let's look at the charts from a trends point of view. Here's the Dow Jones. And you can see if you draw some trend lines on the weekly Dow Jones Industrial Index, you can see a trend line up here where for a few weeks we passed above that trend line, but we're now down below it again. So we'll keep an eye on that. We've got another trend line here with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 support points. So we should be able to see, it's going to be resistance right now, right? Because we're down here. So that was the resistance before COVID. The bounce back has now met this resistance. So you could say that this is a lower high, but it's along a series of trend points. So it's a pretty good indicator that is a ceiling to break. Caterpillar looks a little similar. You can see that it's in a horizontal pattern here, not parallel lines, but you do have 1, 2, 3, and a whole series here where it wasn't able to get above, and then came the 2018 crash, then the move up, and then the COVID withdrawal. So now we've got this here. We could probably find another trend line if you wanted to, maybe something like this, and that might prove to be resistance. So take your charts and look for some trend lines, because right now the Ichimoku isn't quite telling us. The Bollinger Bands were a good indicator for us last week, but we've now moved back within the Bollinger Bands. Apple, go on, click, Apple is just going way above its trend line. So there's lots of talk about it being overbought, but I wouldn't read too much into that. Any pullbacks are going to be bought. Any dips on Apple are going to be bought, and the stock is just going higher. Caterpillar, let's look at its trend lines. We've already seen Caterpillar, haven't we? Google, who we don't look at very often, but there's a trend line that started in 2007, point number 2 in 2018, and then we popped above it, but we came down with COVID, and now we're back to that trend line. So we finished today just on that trend line. That's interesting. That should prove to be resistance. Home Depot, similar message here. We had a 3-point trend line, and then you had COVID. Then you had the bounce back, inability to hold the trend line, and now we've pulled below it, and we're just closing today just at the trend line. So yet another stock with a trend line. I'm not saying that they all have trend lines, but there are a number of them that do. Here's Walt Disney. Its trend line first starts in 2015. In fact, if we extend this trend line to the left, it'd be a stretch to say it started back there. So 1 point, 2 point, 3 points. COVID was the third point. Down we went, and now we're struggling to get back to that trend line. JP Morgan is one of the banks that I took a look at. There's a trend line starting in March 2012, the second point, and the third point. So it's not as many points along the trend line as we've seen with other stocks, and we're a long way off from that one right now, but you might want to draw another trend line right in here, where you can see these stocks right in here. These prices right in here are another trend line that may be resistance right up here at around 120. Facebook, I couldn't find any. Walmart, found this one that started in 2012, then 2013, 2014, 2018, 2019, struggled after COVID, didn't pull back as much in COVID as we saw in the other stocks, because Walmart is a place where people will go during the times of financial economic uncertainty, but we're struggling back, and now that's going to be a bit of a tough ceiling for Walmart to break. Whirlpool, not so much. Nvidia, didn't see anything there. Did I look at anything else? AT&T, that stock is just basically not doing very much. We've got this little trend line here, so it's got a long way to go to break that trend line up in the high 30s. You know, if you're holding it like I am, you're holding it as a dividend play, because it's a great dividend. It's over 5%, closer to 6%, and I'm selling future 35 calls against it because I don't see it going to 35 this year. So selling those calls is like getting an extra dividend out of the stock this year. US Bank, you're looking at a bit of a channel here with this low, this low, this low, broke it here, this low, and then COVID broke it. So it's got a long way to go before it finds that resistance. So that's it for today. We're beyond the 5 minutes that I promised I would try to keep in, but we looked at Bollinger Bands last week for indicators. We've used the Ichimoku so many times for great indicators in the Chiku span. Now we're looking at trend lines, and we can see that the market is pulling, the big stocks are pulling back from the trend lines and are going to meet resistance at those levels in the future.